all, it really is on the big story that I know we've all seen. Yesterday, Lorene and I saw on the internet the picture of this young boy, Alan, dead on the beach. Look, I think our reaction to that, the first thing that crossed our mind was, remembering our own son, Ben, at that age, running around like that. And I think, I think that is it brings tears to your eye. I think that is the reaction of every parent. Anyone who's ever had a 2-year-old or been near a 2-year-old, been a parent in Canada or anywhere around the world. It truly is a heartbreaking situation. It's a terrible tragedy, and I know all of our hearts go up to those who are touched personally by this tragedy. What I want to say, though, is this, friends. I don't need to tell you what we saw yesterday was a tragedy. What I need to tell you is that it is far, far worse than that. Far worse. As Prime Minister, I have been to refugee camps in Jordan and in Iraq. And I can tell you that I have seen tens of thousands of people in these desperate circumstances. And there are millions more in exactly the same situation. There are, in fact, tens of millions of people, not in the refugee camps, but tens of millions of people whose lives have been affected by what is going on in that part of the world in a way that is catastrophic, that has put their very survival on a day-to-day basis in jeopardy. That is the reality of the situation that we are dealing with. And it is getting worse, and getting worse in many parts of the world. We see what's happening in Iraq and Syria, but this kind of violence, the kind of violent jihadist movement we've seen there is happening in more and more places. Our country has the most generous immigration and refugee system in the world. We admit per capita more people than any other. During the lifetime of this government, we've had 2.5 million new arrivals in Canada. Many of those people, a large part of them, are a large part. From where, sir? Well, it's great to have you here. There we are. A large part of the people who come are people who are coming for reasons of family reunification, for humanitarian and compassionate grounds, and of course, refugee situations as well. And earlier in this campaign, I announced that this government, we have already accepted tens of thousands of refugees from this part of the world, from the Middle East, and I announced earlier in the campaign that we will accept more. But friends, refugee policy alone is not remotely a solution to this problem. It is of a scale far, far beyond that. That's why we have been one of the largest donors of humanitarian aid of any country relative to our size in this part of the world. And I know that has been appreciated by many of the people I did visit when I was there. And yes, we are also doing what we have to do to try and fight the root cause of this problem. And that is the violent campaign being led against people, against millions of people by ISIS. That is why we are part of the international military coalition. A few days ago, I met with the Patriarch of the Syriac Orthodox Church. It's an example of just one of a number of communities I have met, leaders of those communities who are represented in that part of the region and have some of their community here in Canada. He was visiting us from Damascus, Syria. That is where he actually still lives, still resides. And look, what they all tell you is this, friends. They all tell you we're honored, we're delighted, we're relieved when we see some of our people coming to this country, and we appreciate you doing that. We also appreciate the humanitarian aid you deliver to us, obviously. We need it. Our people are desperate. But more than anything, what we need to have people to be in a situation where people are not attacking and trying to kill us. There's not a solution. We do not want to pick up our entire communities, hundreds of thousands or millions of people, and move them out of a region where they have lived for as long as history has been written. They do not want that. They want us to help them. That is why we provide refugee placements, friends. That is why we provide humanitarian aid to these millions of people, and that is why we are part of the international military coalition taking on the so-called Islamic State. We can do all of these things, we should do all of these things, and Canada will and is doing all of these things.
From the media, we'll begin with Paul Wells from Maclean's, please.
Prime Minister, you repeated the necessity for the military engagement against ISIS. That engagement began in 2014. The refugee crisis began in 2011.
Right.
Today, Angela Merkel, David Cameron, Francois Hollande, who are all participating in the military action against ISIS, are treating this refugee crisis as a refugee crisis.
Right.
Canada has accepted about 10% of the refugees from Syria that it has said it will. Will the deaths of these two boys increase the rate of Canadian acceptance of Syrian refugees?
As I indicated to you at the beginning of the campaign, we've indicated we're going to accept more refugees from this region, from Syria and Iraq. That's an announcement I've already made. But let's be clear, all of our allies have been treating this situation as not just a refugee crisis, but also obviously a humanitarian crisis, and also a crisis of global and international peace and security that poses a direct threat not to just to the people there, but to people throughout the world. All of the leaders you mentioned share that position, and that is the position of the Government of Canada.
Thank you. We'll continue with Richard Madden, CTV.
Prime Minister, in your opening remarks, you made reference to that heartbreaking photo of Aileen Curdy. And as you know, there were reports that Curdy's extended family living right here in BC had their application rejected in Canada. Can you explain what happened to their application, and does your government feel any sense of responsibility for this child's tragic death?
I think actually, look, the minister and officials are looking at all of the facts of the situation. I think some of the things you're asserting are not correct. I think, in fact, officials and even the family will correct the record on some of those particular matters, but we will get all the facts and we will look at the situation. Look, as I say, we could drive ourselves crazy with grief if we look at as I say, the millions of people literally who are in danger, the tens of thousands who are dying. We could drive ourselves crazy with grief. Obviously, we do what we can do to help.
Lovitz from the Canadian Press, please.
Good morning, Prime Minister. This morning there was a news conference in which this young boy's family made a plea. They said, please, please, help those people over there in the water. Please don't let them die. Feed them, give them some water, buy a banana for them. What is your message to this family? There are millions of people who need to get out now, not 4 years from now, over which your government has pledged to help refugees, but right now.
Well, as I say, my message is obviously the same. Look, grief is a terrible thing. Our hearts go out to the family, anybody touched by this. But our message has been the same all along. We are admitting more refugees, and we will. I promised that earlier in the campaign. It's one of our campaign commitments. But that is not a solution in and of itself. We actually have to feed, clothe, educate people who are there. We're doing that as well. And we cannot allow a situation to continue where tens of millions of people face displacement and or slaughter. That is why we must also engage with the military, with our military community, with our international allies, to try and counter this growing violence. It is simply not acceptable to pretend that you can deal with this terrible crisis by only dealing with one small aspect of the problem. It is much bigger than that, and that is what we are doing as a government.
James Cudmore, CBC.
Hi, Prime Minister. Same topic. Something happened yesterday around the world and in the hearts of people around the world when they saw that picture. And then something happened again when we learned that there was a Canadian connection to this family. It's happening here. It's all that anyone is talking about that I can tell in the places that I'm seeing online and the conversations that I'm hearing even in the hotel that we're at. I've heard you say today that you have promised more. Earlier in the campaign you promised more. But I'm listening to people and hearing from people who are wondering whether we should not be doing even more. You described this today as being a heartbreaking moment. You said we can drive ourselves crazy with grief. But there's also this suggestion that maybe what we have done and what we have promised as a rich, wealthy country has not been enough. In the context of looking at that photo, is it really enough for Canada to say we're doing our part?
Look, what I've said is we have to do everything. I think that is the reaction people should have. Like, as I said, we had the same reaction, Lorena and I, as everybody else, when we see the photo. It's heart-wrenching. It brings you right to your own family. But it doesn't lead to the conclusion in my mind that there's only some things we should be doing and nothing else. Our view has been that on refugees, we should do what we're doing, and we need to do more. And I've announced that. But our message is also that we need to help people who are actually there and can't get away. And part of the way we need to help them is to stop the awful violence that is being directed at them, displacing them and killing them. And I do not know how, for the life of me, you look at that picture and you say, yeah, we want to help that family, but we want to walk away from the military coalition that's trying to kill from the military mission that's trying to prevent ISIS from killing tens of millions of people. I don't know how for the life of me you reach that kind of a conclusion. We reach the conclusion that we should be doing everything, we are doing everything, and we will do more of everything. That's our conclusion. What I'll say?